What is up, everybody? Welcome to Football Diehards, and we're going to be going over the slate position by position like we usually do on Wednesday. Shows move to Friday this week, and then we'll come back on Sunday, go for it game by game. But I'm here, as always, with Jamie. Jamie, what is up? You looking forward to this slate?
Yes, sir. How you doing this week? You ready for a full 11 games?
I'm feeling good. What is this, week 14 or week 13? I keep fixing it up.
We're 13, so
There
this
we
is,
go.
for our seasonal listeners, this is, for some, I guess, the last regular season week. It is in the Scott Fish Bowl.
Yep. Unfortunately, my fantasy team had not done too great this year, thanks to Christian McCaffrey and Calvin Ridley.
Oh, yeah. That'll get it done. Is that Scott Fish Bowl, or is that your main,
It's
just
my
your
it's my
main
main
league?
my main league. Yeah.
Yeah, well, on paper, that looked like a really good start.
Yeah, it happens. But yeah, week 13 here, 11 game slate. As always, we'll go by position. Like I said, Sunday we'll go game by game. But we have the quarterbacks here. We'll talk some lineup percentages. We have Lamar Jackson up top, 7,800. Kyler Murray, 7,500. Matt Stafford, 73. Tom Brady, 72. And Jalen Hurts, 7,000. Out of this little bunch here, what guy are you looking at the most this week?
Well, our ownership projections are really reflecting Brady as the top owned quarterback, and that's one I agree with. Um, just we've had a 20+ year sample of what Brady looks like in clean pockets, and Atlanta ranks last in sack rate, 31st in pressure rate, 30th in QB hit rate. If they can't get to Brady, I mean, it's ridiculous what he could do to them this weekend. I know he doesn't have Antonio Brown still, but he's got Godwin, he's got Evans, he's got Gronkowski, he's got Fournette to keep the line honest and to pass to out of the backfield. I love Brady and the whole Buccaneers offense this week. What about you?
Yeah, so up in this range, you guys we mentioned. I mean, not really a ton sticking out. Lamar Jackson's looked kind of off the last couple of weeks. A game that I'm not too interested in. Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Kyler Murray injured, may play, may not play. Matt Stafford, I think, is interesting. Jalen Hurts, I think, is always in play, but he's questionable. I think last time I heard it's 50-50 for him to play. So yeah, for me, it's Tom Brady. We do see that on the ownership. It's massive ownership favoring Tom Brady here. 17.46%. Tom Brady projected to be the highest owned quarterback, and there's not really a close second. The closest to him is Jalen Hurts at 8%. So a lot of people are going to be on Tom Brady, and for a very good reason. Great matchup against Atlanta. The stacking options are phenomenal. Last week we saw Fournette go up and pull off a huge game, multiple touchdowns. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen again. I think now is a great time to go back to some of these Buccaneers that kind of disappointed last week, and we see what Tom Brady did to Atlanta back in week 2, 276 yards, five touchdowns, and I think that could happen here. Atlanta's passing defense is very bad, so yeah, for me it's Tom Brady up in this top range, and I don't really think there's a close second for me.
No, I agree. My only issue right now is if I'm going to be able to afford him on DraftKings. He's super easy to do so on FanDuel, so that's for sure going to be the way I go this year. But we got a couple of skill position players that we'll be talking about, I'm sure, on this show. And it's if you want them, Brady's got to go. But yeah, I agree with you that he's got that 4 to 5 touchdown upside this week.
Oh yeah, 100%. And in terms of cash games, I actually don't have Brady in my cash lineup as of now. I have somebody else, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that guy. And he is in this range. In this range, we have Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Carson Wentz, and Derek Carr. Out of this range, is there anybody that you're liking?
Um, I do like Derek Carr for his price tag at 6,000. He's the only problem with the Raiders is that they are screamingly lacking in playmakers anymore. And now Waller too is out. We've got a tight end that we're going to be using for the Raiders. Spoiler alert later on, but the matchup can't really get any better. They've given up the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Washington, that is their opponent, and the fourth most to wide receivers. So if you like Carr and his play action in a must win for the Raiders at 6,000. I don't mind him there. Is that your guy? I'm still struggling at quarterback. I have a placeholder, but I could go any way from here. Is that the guy you have?
Yep, that is my guy. I mean, the thing is, like you mentioned, great matchup. You really can't ask for a better matchup. And then just the thing is, you can stack up Derek Carr so easily with Hunter Renfro, who I like, we'll talk about, and then also Moreu. And you can stack those three up, and you still have 35,500 salary remaining. So it allows you to do other things in your lineup. So yeah, right now for me, it's Derek Carr. Didn't think it would be Derek Carr, but I mean, this is probably the first week where I'm like, I really like Derek Carr here in the spot against Washington. I mean, the price tag, the matchup, everything lines up. He's coming in at about 7% owned, which is the fifth highest as of now.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I would really love to get to Brady, and I can if I want, but it's just a matter of we'll talk about the guys at running back and wide receiver that I'm going to want in this cash. But if I want both those guys in, and I don't know if you're playing, I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
If you're looking at both those guys too, you got to get down into this range, and even Carr's price tag is pushing it if you are doing that. So yeah, Carr seems to be a nice value at 6,000 to me. So I'm definitely gonna take your advice and give that a long, hard look.
Yeah, I mean, it's Carr at 6,000. It's Brady up top. One other guy that does stick out, Justin Herbert. He has 6,700. Just really consistent, throwing the ball a ton. 25 DraftKings points on average. Decent stacking options. Going against Cincinnati, who Cincinnati's defense is pretty solid, but I think Herbert would be the other guy that sticks out. But with that said, I'd rather go up and get a Tom Brady or probably pay down at for Derek Carr. So he's kind of in the middle there. And then other than that, really no other quarterback sticks out a ton. Matt Ryan is intriguing, but I cannot trust Matt Ryan ever really. So any thoughts on anybody else that we did not mention that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay again if you want to go a little bit cheaper with Taylor Heineke. Um, he's thrown the ball 32 and 35 times in 2 of the last 3 games, and the Raiders have been plummeting in pass defense lately. They were bad all year in rush defense, and we'll get to that in a second too. But I mean, if you use Heineke there as a means to an end to get those top guys that I'm really high on, I guess that's okay too. This is one of the better games. We don't really have that like 55, 56 point over under this week. So you're looking at, you mentioned Herbert, that Chargers Bengals game, and this one are really the two that are at 50 other than Brady and the Bucks. So I'm okay with either quarterback here. I would prefer Carr to Heineke if I have the money, but if you don't, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. You're a Giants fan. Any interest in Glennon? He's 4,000. The matchup's good. Do you like him at all, or are you going to stay away? I mean, he's really cheap.
I'm probably going to stay away, but if you built a lineup with him, I would think it would be full of all the players that I want here. He doesn't have to do much at 4,000. The only problem with him, I would really like him a lot better if just some of his playmakers were playing. Tony is out, Shepard is out, Galladay can't get open. Like, he can't get any separation. I think Evan Ingram is a nice play for the Giants. I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm probably not going to do it, but if you said Glennon was your cash quarterback, I wouldn't say you were playing it poorly.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. Like, I wouldn't expect a ton, but what you would expect would be going up and getting, like you said, Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. That's for sure. But yeah, that's kind of the quarterback position. Yeah, I think we nailed it.
It's easy if you do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think we nailed this. I mean, it looks like we're both on Brady. We don't mind some Carr. It's pretty straightforward at quarterback this week.
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned the Herbert, and that was pretty much a perfect assessment of it. You want to go up to Brady if you're in that range, or down. I think that 6,700 is kind of an issue for cash, but that makes me love him all the more in GPP.
Yep, that's for sure. But moving on to the running back range, there lots of plays stick out. So up top we have Jonathan Taylor, 9,200, Austin Eckler, 83, Joe Mixon, 81, Najee Harris, 77, Alexander Mattison, 76, and Leonard Fournette 73, and Cordell Patterson 7,000. Obviously, we both like Jonathan Taylor at 9,200. I really don't get this price. I mean, he was, 9,100 last week against Tampa Bay, a great run defense. He did well. And now they only priced him up 100 against Houston. Like, I think he's going to go off. The last 2 weeks, he's actually on paper had very tough matchups. And in the last 2 weeks, he's combined for like over 75 DraftKings points. So for me, it's like a no-brainer. I'm going to have Taylor in my cash lineup. I'm going to have a ton of Taylor exposure. Are you as high on Taylor as me, or are you going to kind of get off a little bit? It looks like he's the highest owned at 26% as of now.
Yeah, I'm for sure playing him. And you said it. He destroyed two of the top three rush defenses when he played them in the last couple of weeks. And now he gets the Texans, who are giving up the fifth most fantasy points per game to running backs. Colts are favored by 10. So, he's going to be fed early enough. And he's also the passing down back. Now he's passed Nyheim Hines in that. He's averaged almost 7 yards per carry over the last 9 weeks. And I said this on the radio last night too, that there's kind of two paths to this, or three paths. You pay for Taylor and Kupp, and you fill it out the rest. You pay for Taylor and you go mid at wide receiver, or you use three of these mid-tier running backs and pay up for Kupp at wide receiver. I think they're all viable, but I just can't see fading Taylor in this one. I think you're going to be on the wrong end of the double ups if you do. So I'm kind of locking him in and then kind of going from there.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it. Like, at the running back position, there's some guys that are like really cheap that stick out. And what I've been doing is just mixing in two of those guys down low and getting Taylor, and it's been working out pretty well. But yeah, Taylor up top. Then we have Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon. Yeah, I mean, I think Mixon's in a solid spot here. I did have a friend tell me about like the weather. It's not going to be great. Lots of rain, which I don't think that necessarily affects Mixon a ton. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Great matchup. He's at home as well. The last 2 weeks, he's combined for 58 rushing attempts, so they're making it a focus to get in the ball. So I think Mixon would be that one other guy up top, but I find myself this week just going to Taylor as much as possible, so I'm not getting overly invested in some of these other guys up top.
Yeah, I like the call there on Mixon, and I said this on the radio last night. I said it about Eckler, but Mixon fits the build. When I'm kind of in GPPs, when there's a chalk high priced guy like we're going to see with Taylor this week, I really like to find those equally high priced guys. They're not quite at Taylor. They're both about 1,000 cheaper. But they're both coming in at less ownership. And I think that's a really smart play in GPP. You said it about Mixon. He's got a great matchup against the Chargers. Then on the other side, Eckler, the Bengals have given up almost 8 catches per game to running backs. And Eckler leads the league in receptions for running backs and is third in receiving yards. So I think either one of these guys, if the Colts pass on the Texans and it's not the Taylor smash game that we're all expecting it, Mixon and Eckler could both beat him in raw score, and then you got some big time leverage on the field there.
Yep, big time leverage for sure, and then also you're going to be saving a lot of salary doing that as well. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing for like tournaments to potentially have no Jonathan Taylor in your lineup, get different a little bit. Jonathan Taylor 26% owned, Joe Mixon 17% owned, and then Austin Eckler 12% owned. So yeah, I definitely get it. I think all three of these guys up top are phenomenal plays. So Dalvin Cook's out. Najee Harris, don't have a ton of interest in him, but I do think we got to talk about Madison a little bit. So he is priced probably accordingly here, 7,600. He's going against Detroit, which is a very good matchup. I'm taking a look at the ownership. Madison is about 12% owned projected, which makes him the 6th highest projected owned running back on the slate. What are your thoughts on him? I think he's in a solid spot here. I think, like I said, I think the price is about right. I haven't been getting a ton of them, but I think he's a good play here.
No, it's exactly what you're saying. He's a great play, but you're right. He's priced appropriately, and there are other running backs that aren't. So I haven't found myself getting to him either. But I mean, he's had 4 games where he's had over 20 touches, and he has averaged 161 yards in those games. So you know, I don't see aside from an injury against this Detroit team that has been terrible against the run all season, I don't see him having a bad game. So, yeah, if he winds up in your cash, you get no argument from me. But I mean, there are cheaper plays that I like a little better from a per dollar standpoint.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. But you go into this mid range, I think a couple guys do stick out in this mid range. We do have Barkley. We have James Robinson's questionable. Darrell Henderson is questionable as well. Josh Jacobs questionable. Eli Mitchell, James Conner, Myles Gaskin, Gibson, Montgomery, Freeman, Jamal Williams, Miles Sanders, Murray, and Collins and Johnson. 5K to about 7K. Out of that range, who's really sticking out to you?
I got two guys that I love, and I'm curious if they're kind of at the top of your list. One is Mitchell, who had 32 touches last week, a 70% snap share, and a big 49ers win. Now he faces the Seahawks, who have given up the second most fantasy points per game to running backs, with Deebo Samuel out, who was taking a lot of that rushing share. So, you know, with these other guys out, he has been getting more involved in the passing game too, which is great. He's locked in for me for cash against Seattle. And then Gibson is the other one. 5,700 is too cheap. Last 3 games, he's had 36 touches, 19 touches, 26 touches. They're really featuring him as they've started to win too. And J.D. McKissick is out. So, and he had 7 catches last week. I know, and McKissick was playing in that one. So you got to figure that Gibson's role grows. So no matter what, you know, with Taylor, I'm kind of set at running back right now with Taylor, Mitchell, and Gibson, and it's really going to kind of take a lot to get me off those 3 in my cash lineup. So where are you on those guys, and who else do you think maybe can kind of fit in?
Yeah, there's actually a couple I do like in this range. A couple you mentioned. Yeah, you mentioned Mitchell, phenomenal matchup against Seattle. I think it's going to be I think they're like 6-point favorites, something like that. So they're favored as well. I think it's a great spot for him. So he's 6K. And then also, like you mentioned, Gibson. Gibson's probably one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, just, factoring in the price and all that. Like last game, 29 rushing attempts, 7 targets. I think Gibson is a phenomenal play. One other one was going to be Jamal Williams for Detroit going against Minnesota. He's 5,400, so there is no Swift. So I think that's going to help him out a ton. So yeah, Mitchell, Williams, Gibson, all 6K and under, and I think they're all very phenomenal plays.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's the one reason that I think you can use that leverage to not play Taylor, but I still don't recommend it. I know he's priced up, but there are cheaper options, but none of them have Taylor's floor or ceiling. But you're right, there are so many in this range that are fun.
Yeah, Jamal Williams coming in at the 4th projected highest owned, 16%. We see Elijah Mitchell, 9%, the 11th projected highest owned, and then Antonio Gibson, 10%, the 10th highest owned. One more guy I'll throw out. I don't see myself getting to him this week because we just talked about those 3 who I think are phenomenal. But one other guy that does stick out a little bit is going to be Myles Gaskin. He has 5,800, solid matchup against the Giants, and they're giving him the ball. 16 carries last week at 23 carries in week 11. He's getting opportunities. Solid matchup. He's looking decent. I think he's the other guy I'd look at, but it's hard to get there when you have Mitchell at 6K, you have Williams at 54, and you have Gibson at 57. And other than that, I think that's about it for me. Is there any other guy that sticks out to you in this range?
Not for cash, but I said on the radio last night, really keep an eye on the Eagles running back situation, because all of them have been questionable with something this week. It looks like Miles Sanders is going to be good to go. So, as long as Boston Scott plays too, I think each one of them has flex appeal in GPPs. And if for some reason one of them sits, then you got to really think about putting the other one in, because the Jets against running backs this year, not only the most fantasy points per game, 21 touchdowns allowed to running backs in 11 games. And they're both cheap. So like I said, I think you could play either one of them in tournaments now anyway, if they're both active. But if one of them sits, that's really tough to avoid.
Yep, for sure. Good call. I do think, Miles Sanders right now, 18%. Boston Scott around 4%. So yeah, very low owned, interesting targets there. So yeah, I think that's about it for running backs for me. Was there any other guy below the 5K range that sticks out, or you think it's about it?
No, other than Boston Scott, I'm looking into that 5-6 range and then up to the top guys we talked about.
Yep, sounds good. Looks like we're on the same page there. But now going to wide receivers. So yeah, wide receivers up top, we have Cooper Kupp. He is 9,000. He is 9,000. And Deebo Samuel is going to be out. We have Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen, Jamar Chase. So out of these top guys, I honestly don't have a lot of interest in any of them besides Cooper Kupp at 9,000. This price really does not make a ton of sense to me considering he was 9,600 in week 12. He was 9,300 in week 10. Why is he 9,000 against the Jaguars here? It just makes no sense to me. So, yeah, like we were talking about, I mean, if we could get Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp in the same lineup, that gives us such a high floor and ceiling. And I really do like that. So I'm going to try to do that as much as possible. But, yeah, other than that in this range, I mean, Keenan Allen, I think's in a interesting spot. But if it's going to be, like, terrible weather, I'm not sure I want to play a ton of Keenan Allen. And just I think it's Cooper Kupp for me up here or just go down low.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. Like, I don't really understand why his price has dropped. He hasn't done anything to make it drop. He's still getting double-digit targets every week, and like you said, the matchup against Jacksonville is prime for receivers. So I mean, I really, really want to get him and Jonathan Taylor into cash. It does require some sacrifices, either at quarterback or defense or at that third receiver, at the other receiver spots. But I do think it's worth it because I think as far as if you tier your players, I think Taylor is in a tier of his own at running back, and I think Kupp is in a tier of his own at wide receiver, which goes a long way in these kind of contests.
Yeah, I totally agree. We see Cooper Kupp coming in at 19% ownership, the second highest owned wide receiver on the slate. First is Keenan Allen, 21%. And I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. I talk about him every week. So yeah, it makes sense. Keenan Allen, he's safe. He's gonna, catch passes, get a lot of targets, all that good stuff. I don't hate it. But again, the weather does concern me in that game. Going down a little bit, this is kind of, a lot of guys do stick out in this range. So 6,800, Deontay Johnson, 67, Mike Evans, Metcalf, 67, Godwin, Brown, Lockett, Waddle, Hopkins, Smith, and Claypool. Out of this little bunch here, what guy you liking?
Well, you cut out for a second there, so I didn't quite hear the list. If you want to go through them again quick.
Yeah, just 6K to 7K, Claypool, Smith, Hopkins, Waddle, Lockett, Brown, Godwin, Metcalf, Evans, and Johnson. Those
like
7 or 8.
Yeah, so I do like Deontay Johnson, kind of like the same reason you talked about with Keenan Allen. I'm not a big fan. I think you mentioned it earlier when we were talking about this game. I'm not a huge fan of Ravens Steelers from a offensive explosion standpoint anyway. But he's pretty much, it doesn't really matter who he's playing, how bad Roethlisberger has looked, how far he can throw the ball. He's Keenan Allen for this team too. And he's cheaper. So I do think he's very much in play for cash, and he'd be the one, if I was looking in that mid tier, that I would be looking at. So who's your favorite in that range?
In this range, like you said, Deontay Johnson, 6,800. His price is probably way too cheap for the amount of volume he's going to get week in and week out. 14 targets in week 12, 13 in week 11. Deontay Johnson, and then also, I think it's a great time to go back to Chris Godwin, somebody that disappointed last week. He definitely disappointed me last week. 5 targets, 4 receptions, only 24 yards. We saw Leonard Fournette go out there and have a monster game, the best game of his season there. I think it's a great time to go back to Chris Godwin. I mean, prior to the last game, he was on a roll. 19 points against the Giants, 12 against Washington, 31 against the Saints, 28 against Chicago. Still no Antonio Brown. And Chris Godwin against Atlanta, he's 6,600. This price tag just makes no sense. Like, this is going to be the cheapest he's been in the last 4 weeks. 7,100 against Washington, 6,700 against the Giants, and 7K against the Colts. So, yeah, Chris Godwin is somebody I'm definitely going back to. And even like Mike Evans is somebody else that, You had an off game last week. I think going back to both these guys is not a terrible idea. And just taking a look at the ownership, Chris Godwin is coming in at the third highest projected owned wide receiver, 18%. Was hoping, more people would be off of him after a bad game last week, but looks like people are bouncing right back on him. And then looking for Mike Evans, he is the 9th projected highest owned wide receiver. So yeah, don't mind going back to those guys. Don't mind stacking up Tom Brady and them together.
Yep, I'm with you completely. And actually, that kind of slipped past me a little bit that he was that cheap. I should have been kind of higher on him in both articles than I was. I talked about him in the Buck stack in my GPP article, but I was still kind of a little bit too vanilla. That price tag at 6,600 is really kind of a gift for him against Atlanta. So you're right on that one.
Yeah, and then I guess one other guy that sticks out, and this price tag's interesting. It sucks not getting Waddle at that 4K, 4.5K like we did in week 2. He was 3,600 in week 1. Now he's finally in the 6K range. I think he's priced accordingly now for the amount of usage he's getting, but he's somebody else that I don't hate. He's been looking phenomenal the last couple weeks. He's really, getting the ball a ton. But like I said, he is finally priced accordingly, I think.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with him too is, and when we get to the value section, I'll talk about him a little bit more. It looks like Parker's going to come back this week. He's practicing fully this week, and he's eligible to be activated. So I don't know what that does to Waddle. We haven't really had that sample size at all yet because Parker's been injured for most of this year, and it's only the last few weeks really that Waddle has, not only taken that target share to a new level with the air yards and the red zone targets and everything too. So I'm not really sure what that's going to do. But I'd like to say that the matchup isn't good, but matchup is good. Giants aren't stopping people anymore either. So other than the Eagles last week, which was a weird one. But I like Waddle. I think he's fine at that price, but I don't think he's near Godwin at 200 more. So I'm good there.
Yeah. 100%. And there are some guys I actually really like in this 5K range, so let's talk about it here. So in this 5K range, you got AJ Green, Galladay, Van Jefferson, Russell Gage, Odell Beckham Jr., Elijah Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, Darnell Mooney, Mike Williams, Michael Pittman, Hunter Renfro, T. Higgins, and Brandon Cooks. Good bunch there. Who are some of the guys you do like?
Gotta love Ayuk this week. He's essentially the wide receiver 1. He's been gaining in usage every week. Deebo Samuel sitting is going to really, really help him because he's not only going to get those wide receiver 1 targets, but he's been utilized in the running game as well, which they don't really have to have him use with Deebo Samuel being so versatile. But not having him really, really stands to elevate Ayuk's presence there. Not a huge good matchup, but with his talent, his efficiency lately, I think he's a really good play at 5,600. What do you think of Ayuk?
He's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, wide receiver plays. Based off the fact, like you said, Deebo Samuel is going to be out. He's now going to be the number 1 guy. Outside of Kittle, he's finally started to, do something this year. The first couple weeks it was a big disappointment. I had a lot better expectations from him, but, as of late, he's starting to finally, get the ball more. 6 targets in week 12, 7 the week prior to that. He's finally just starting to do well, and he's 5,600. He was priced up 300 from last week. No Deebo. No Deebo is huge. So yeah, I'm with you there. I really do like Brandon Ayuk quite a bit this week. I'm trying to take a look at the ownership. And I do not see. Do you see Ayuk anywhere? Oh, there he is. He's 28th. That's crazy. 28th projected.
Yeah, I don't expect that will stay.
Yeah, that's nuts. I hope it stays. We'll see. Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah.
I think that does move a lot. But and then Hunter Renfro, we talked about him a little bit. 5,800. No Darren Waller. I think that's huge. I think Hunter Renfro is going to be the number 1 guy in the offense. 9 targets on Thanksgiving. 134 yards. Did we have a touchdown? I think he had a touchdown. No, he did not have a touchdown, but still, he had 24.6 DraftKings points. Hunter Renfro, 5,800. I don't mind him. And then one more I'll throw out. Allen Robinson is doubtful, so that's going to open up Mooney again. Mooney, has been outperforming Allen Robinson all year, and now since Robinson's not been playing the last couple weeks, 20.6 DraftKings points in week 9 against Pittsburgh. He had 26.1 against Baltimore. 20.5 against Detroit, 3 back-to-back-to-back 20-plus point DraftKings points performances. They're getting him the ball. He's looking good. I guess the only concern with Mooney is the quarterback play. Obviously, terrible quarterback for the Bears, but he's getting the ball and he's 5,600.
Yeah, and I think the guys we've listed there is, again, like those mid-tier running backs we talked about. If you want to be a little more balanced and not use Cooper Kupp, I think it's pretty easy to at least still establish a nice floor with some of the guys that we've talked about there. So, I mean, that it's a very interesting week. And I don't know, I thought that Ayuk's ownership on our site was a little bit low, but I mean, it might not be as silly as we think, because I mean, you have to figure that even with Ayuk's role, Renfro is going to out-own him at $200 more. He's for sure going to get more ownership than Ayuk. And then what do people think of Mooney? At 5,600 at the same price. You got the Rams guys that we didn't even talk about too. I don't think that they'll wind up higher than Ayuk, just because of Cooper Kupp in general. But I mean, they're both very well priced in a great matchup, Beckham and Jefferson. So that's an interesting one to me. But I'm with you that Ayuk is still my favorite of the bunch.
Yep, for sure. I mean, one guy that kind of sticks out. I mean, this price tag for Mike Williams is just weird, because it was Week 6 against Baltimore when he was 8,100. Against New England, he was 7,700. Now we're finally seeing him at 5,700, which is interesting because we know Mike Williams, he has that kind of boom potential. We have not seen it as of late, but I think he could be like an interesting GPP play at this price tag.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, do you see his ownership? Oh yeah, there it is. It's right above Ayuk right now. But yeah, you're right. Like, especially Mike Hilton, Cincinnati's slot corner is good. So I'm not worried about Keenan Allen. But again, if they want to go away from him because he is their strongest defender in the secondary, I could see that big boom, large average depth of target touchdown games from Williams in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate a couple shots there, just because the price tag is now where you can play it. Like I would not play it at 8,100, but now at 57, I don't hate it. You touched on the Rams wide receiver. You got Van Jefferson and also Odell Beckham Jr. Do you prefer one or the other? Or are you not going to play them at all? How do you feel about them?
I lean Odell, but both. It's really kind of a dice roll on that one too. I think if you're stacking and if you do multiple entries, I think it's a good idea to do two and pair each one with Cooper Kupp and Stafford, just to hedge your bet on that, because that could kind of go either way. They're both very similar profiles, with equally good matchups on either side. So I'm good with either one.
Yeah, me too. Kind of the same for me. So yeah, I'm going to be living in that like 5K, 6K range for wide receivers, but going down under the 5K range, I'm kind of looking through it, and not a ton sticks out. I'm curious to hear if you like anybody down in this low range.
Well, the one that has popped up is Parker. As the week is going on, like I said, he's practicing fully. They need to make a move, I think by tomorrow at some time, to activate him. So we'll see that well in advance if he's going to be. But he has really played well with Tua as the quarterback. So, he had 81 yards against New England the first week, and he had 85 against Buffalo in week 5. 2 games he's played with Tua, and those are 2 good pass defenses. And the Giants are not bad, but they're softer for sure than those 2. So at 3,900, I think as long as he's not super limited, that's not a bad play. And then if you want to go a little bit cheaper, and certainly if you want to go for Taylor and Kupp in cash and you need that cheaper play, I mean, Josh Reynolds kind of has established himself as the number 1 receiver in Detroit. I know the number 1 receiver in Detroit isn't the same as a number 1 receiver on other teams, but 3,400, he's got a bit of a connection with Goff, and I think he's actually carrying some ownership. I thought I saw him. Maybe I lost him. If you see him. Shouted it
I
right out. I
don't.
thought I saw him on here. Yeah, no, he's not anywhere. So I guess he's not carrying ownership. I know he's all the way down at 56. So I mean,
56.
again, though it's not awful. I think you can at least bank on him to not get a 0, which at 3,400 is not a bad thing. Those are the
Yeah.
only really two guys. You got any others that you're seeing in that sub 4K range?
I mean, one sneaky one I'll throw out is going to be Jawan Jennings,
Yeah.
3,100. Good matchup. He is coming at about 2% owned, which is the 40th highest. He's going to be the second wide receiver option on the 49ers. I think he's interesting, but don't know how much I'm going to get to him. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm just going to be in that 5,000-6,000 range and trying to go up and get Cup because not a ton sticking out down low.
Yeah, and if you're in that 3K range, you're not really that worried about ownership anyway, so it's okay if you want to use them to get those things, but don't expect a ceiling.
No, definitely not. But yeah, that's the wide receivers there. Tight ends. So yeah, Waller is doubtful. So that's going to open up something we'll talk about. But yeah, Mark Andrews up top, 6K. You got Kittle, 59, Pitts, 56, Ertz, 54, Gronk, 53, Hawkinson, 52, and then Gesicki, 51. Out of this bunch up top, who are you going to the most?
Up top, I like Kittle. That price tag on DraftKings doesn't make much sense to me. The only problem is we're talking a lot about the 49ers, and you can't play them all because they're not all going to hit ceiling games. So, but 5,900 on DraftKings with Debo out. The question with him is usually volume, but I mean, those wide receiver names opposite Brandon Ayuk is not anything that you're fearing. And he could easily lead that team in targets. The Seattle is worse against tight ends than they are against wide receivers too. So in that higher range, he's definitely the guy for me. What about you?
Yep, there's actually two I like up top, and normally I'm just paying down at tight end, but I'm actually going to try to go up a little bit this week and get some guys up here. Like you mentioned, Kittle, I think is in a phenomenal spot, especially with no Debo Samuel. The price tag's way too cheap, and also Gronkowski, 5,300, amazing matchup against Atlanta. And he's when he's healthy, he's been very good. 15.6 DraftKings points on average. Last week, 123 reception yards. Has not had a touchdown though in a while. I think he might be due here. So yeah, I'd be Gronk for me, and then also Kittle 59, Gronk 53. Going down a little bit more, I think Freiermuth is interesting. 4,200. He's somebody that I have been playing quite a bit as of late. Anybody in this mid range that you're looking at for me, it's probably Freiermuth and nobody else.
Has he been cleared?
Looks like it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean that's a good one for me too. The Ravens have been bad against tight ends the entire year, and he's really caught a good connection. Roethlisberger likes to throw those 6-yard pass plays, which is perfect for his tight ends. So yeah, as long as he's in, he's pretty much has got 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games, and Eric runs on IR. So yeah, I'm good with him too.
You mentioned, I believe you mentioned you like Evan Ingram, right?
Well, like is a very loose term, but if you're looking in that cheap range and you're looking to get off the massive chalk that we're going to expect from Foster Moreau, he's probably the only other one in that below 4K range that I would look to get. He and Mike Glennon had a connection in the preseason, and I think I gotta look. I think they played part of a game together this year, and he led in target share for that too. They just don't have anybody else to catch the ball outside of Galladay. Slayton can't be trusted downfield with Mike Glennon throwing it. So yeah, I think with Miami's pass rush, that really suits Ingram a lot in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the Giants are missing a lot of guys, so I think he's definitely on play. But yeah, there's actually 2 guys that do stick out down low. Obviously, the obvious one is going to be Foster Moreau. No Darren Waller. He's 2,700. I think he's the guy that everybody's going to be going to this week. He's the number 1 projected owned tight end, 8.5% right now. He is in my cash build currently. Is he in yours, or are you looking somewhere else to tight end for cash?
No, he's a lock in Cash. And I know we do have another one, which I assume we're talking about the same one. And I have no problem going to him as a GPP pivot in the same price range. But I mean, this Raiders team has nobody left to throw to outside of Hunter Renfro. When he took over for Waller in Week 7, his usage was like tier 1 tight end usage. 2,700, you're not going to get that. He's an easy call for Cash.
I agree. Very easy. I like it. I like it a lot. And then the other one that does stick out a little bit. So since Dan Arnold is on the IR, O'Shaughnessy, 2,600. I guess he kind of sticks out, but to be honest, since we do have Moreo, I'm not going to get too crazy. I'm just going to play Moreo, but he was one other guy that did stick out. O'Shaughnessy is coming in at 3% ownership. He is the 12th highest owned projected tight end.
Yep, and that's a very easy GPP pivot, just straight pivot off of him, get less ownership. If he outscores Moreau, you're in business.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we touched on a lot more tight ends than usual, but yeah, some good ones this week, right? Anything else for tight end that stuck out to you?
No, I think, let me just check quickly. Yeah, actually, are you interested at all in Kyle Pitts? I know we talk about him every week in some sense. I'm really not. I would rather have the guys we talked about, Kittle and Gronk, but he's right between the two of them in pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in him, but like you said, I'd rather have Kittle or Gronk and by a significant margin. But yeah, I think he's a decent, maybe a run back option, because when you're looking at running it back, who are you going to run it back with? Russell Gage? I think it'd have to be Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, it's Pitts or Patterson, so he would be that'd probably be the only way I would use him.
Yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, that's tight end. And then for defense, we'll touch on it a little bit. Is there a defense that's really sticking out to you this week?
There's really not, and it's annoying. The most annoying thing here is we always have that. I just wish there was a 2,200, 2,300 one that you could use and just kind of lock in and build the rest of your line. There's really not this week. You're almost forced to pay up a little bit for one. Which is really irritating to me because every dollar counts on this slate. I mean, it's the Dolphins is the best one, but 3,300. I hate paying that much for a defense, but I mean, they now lead the league in quarterback hits, and they get to face Mike Glennon, which makes me very nervous as a Giants fan. So I mean, if you can get up to them, do it. But if that costs you Taylor or Kupp or one of these players we've talked about, I'm really just not for that. What are your thoughts on defense this week?
I have no idea what to do. Usually it's simple, right? Simple. You go down, you pay for one of these defenses that are 2,200. But I don't want to play the Jaguars against the Rams. I don't want to play the Lions against Minnesota. I don't want to play the Falcons. I don't want to play the Texans. I don't want to play any of these guys. But all the good defenses are 3K and up. That's my problem. So yeah, I'm with you. I might have to pay up for defenses this week because there are some solid ones up top in this 3K range. The Cardinals are coming in at the highest projected own at 3,400. They're 9% owned. Eagles 3,600. Their second highest owned defense. Minnesota Vikings third. Dolphins fourth. The Rams fifth. Maybe the 49ers are interesting. 3K against Seattle has been struggling, but yeah, not a ton sticking out for defense. It's a week where, yeah, like you said, it's very frustrating. I'd rather go down and get some of these cheap defenses, but it's very ugly. A lot uglier than normal.
Yeah, and the other thing too is the one below 3,000 play that I found that was kind of sensible is the Raiders, who are second in pressure rate. That they can generate a pass rush and cause sacks and turnovers. But I am so vested in the Washington offense in Cash that it just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's very irritating. I'm kind of hoping something will pop up before Sunday that will get me down into that, place where I at least feel somewhat comfortable playing the Lions defense at 2,300 or somebody in that. There's not even anybody playable. The Falcon, you're not gonna play the Falcons. You're not gonna play the Jaguars, like you said. It's very annoying.
Yeah, usually I'll play one of these terrible defenses against a not so great offense, and it works out a lot. but you can't play a terrible defense against a great offense. It's just not going to work out. So, yeah, we'll have to talk about it Sunday, see what we think sticks out then. But anything else for this slate? It looks like we're on the same page for most of it.
Yeah, I think we covered it pretty nicely. Like you said, it'll be certainly interesting to go through game by game. So I'm looking forward to that when we get to it.
Yep, for sure. So, all right, we'll be back on Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. We'll go by game. We'll touch on the updated ownership. We'll talk some strategy. Cannot wait for Sunday. So, we'll see you guys then, and good luck for this week.